All right, so today we're going to do a brief overview of the customization that is the Prism Inventory CSV tool. This tool can be used for importing inventory items directly into Prism, as well as departments and purchase orders as well. So we're just going to run the tool here from the desktop. And this is the interface for the customization. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create your maps, which will tell the tool how to import the data from your import file. So if we go under Setup, we have our map creator. First things you want to do, if you don't have a predefined map, is create a new one. We're going to select the format of the map that we're using. So we can do it for departments, we could do it for importing vendors, or we could do it for importing inventory. We're going to select inventory in this case. And then if we're creating a new map, we're going to give it a name. We'll just call this, PO import and hit new. And now we have our PO import created. The next step of settings here is the delimiter that's in the file that we're going to be using. Typically, it's going to be from a CSV, so it'll typically be a comma delineated, but if you've created a tab file or using some other type of delineator, you can select those as well. And then if your file has a header, which still tells you what's in the columns, then you're going to want to make sure you choose has a header option. Quoted strings is if you have quotation marks in there. Um, and in our available fields here should be everything that pertains to the type of format that we selected. So we selected inventory, so this is going to be all the database fields that pertain to inventory. So we have things like description 1, description 2, we've got cost, size, and so on. And this is the list of things we can select from. Over on the other side here are the things that we've assigned to the map for the specific import. So if the first column in your file is your ALU data, then you would find ALU in our available fields. You hit the arrow to bring it over, and now we have ALU. If the second field was cost, we would bring cost over. An important thing to note is that the number of fields you have in the file fields must match the number of columns or different data types you have in the file itself, even if you're skipping some. So if you're going to skip a field that doesn't pertain to what you're trying to import, you still have to put a placeholder in there. So in this case, at the very bottom, there's an ignore data type. So we would say, okay, we want to ignore that next line of data. So in our file, we would have the ALU followed by the cost, followed by some piece of data that we don't care about for the specific import. So we're going to ignore what's in that column. And then we would go to the next one, say like, okay, the one after that is attribute. There's some modifiers down here that help us change what specific data is going into a field that might have additional types of data. So for example, price levels, there could be multiple price levels. So we need to be able to specify which price level we want the data to go into. So if we go down to where our price is, so we go to price level, we have to say, okay, we want this to be price level 1. We could say, okay, that's coming in now as PL1 or price level 1. If the products in the file have multiple price levels, then you could say, okay, well then the column after that is going to be price level 2. Oops, price level 2, and so on. The same thing goes for quantities. If you're going to be importing just a inventory quantity, you have to specify the store number. So you'd say, okay, the quantity for store number 1 is in this field, and so on. Up here at the top, there's some default values. So if we click at the default values tab, we have a default value of active. So that means anything we're importing in through the tool is going to by default have an active flag, a max discount percentage of max discount percent one, max discount percent two. Those are by default set to 100. For whatever reason you don't want the new products to be discountable by that amount, then you could change the default value to be 50, 25, whatever you want it to be. You could also add additional default values. So if all of the products that you're bringing in from this specific vendor or this specific um, um, PO has maybe like the same type of UDF, you could say, okay, well, we want a default UDF value of whatever it is. We'll just say, B-Day, birthday, for example. And say, okay, so all of the stuff that we're importing in here are going to have this default. And so these values are ignoring what's in the file. So if these columns don't need to be in the file itself, it's going to automatically import the items with whatever we set here as the default. So we have one that's already created. We'll go here over to this other PO import. We'll just say no, we don't want to save that. So here's our pre-constructed one. So we see here, because this is a PO, we have the PO number is going to be in the first column, and then there's some additional PO fields. We got vendor code, department, UPC. We're using UPC in this case instead of ALU as our lookup. Description one, size attribute, and so on. So once you have your map created, then you can go back to the main screen. We'll kind of cover some of these import settings. Validate data only. If this option is checked, when you run the import, it is not going to actually make any changes within Prism. It's just going to validate what you have in your file and make sure that what you're importing based on that map is going to not throw any errors. So errors would be like having too many columns for what you have in your import map. So if you have 13 file section or data types in your import map, but in the file itself it has 15, it's going to throw you an error, and so on. And so this is a way of kind of validating how good your file and your map are without actually committing any changes to Prism. Uppercase descriptions just means whenever it imports data, it's going to automatically uppercase all of the description information, so that way if it's in the file as lowercase, it will make it all uppercase for you, makes everything look nice and clean. Truncate inventory descriptions. The default field length for description fields is 30 characters. And so if your file has descriptions that would be longer than 30 characters, rather than you have to go and fix the data within the file, the tool will actually automatically truncate the data down to 30 characters for you if you have this option selected. Import new items only does what it says. When you run the import, it's only going to bring in items that it sees as new. And in this case, we're looking everything up by UPC. So if it sees a UPC in your import that it was a new item, it will import that information. If it sees an item that's already in the system based on the UPC, it will ignore the data in there. Typically, we would leave this off because we're usually wanting to add new items as well as update existing items with potentially new information, new pricing, new cost, etc. Approve new items. If this is checked when you run the import tool, it's actually going to prompt you if you want to allow the creation of the new item every time it gets to one. So if you have a file with several hundred records in it, maybe only 6 of them or so are actually new items, it will go through the file, make the changes to the non-new items, and then when it hits a new item, it will say, this is a new item, do you want to add it? And you would say yes. Over here, we have the primary identifier. It's either has to be ALU or UPC. And again, this is what the tool is looking at to determine if an item is in the system already or not. We can set our default taxable code. If your file does not have an ALU or a UPC value in it, and you need it to assign it, you have to check the ALU or UPC sequence. And the caveat with that is you'd have to go into Prism, figure out where your ALU sequencing ended. So let's say your sequence ended at 1000. So if you're looking in Prism, ALU 1000 is the highest you have. We would say, okay, we want our next ALU to start at 1001. And when it goes and imports, we'd have to have this as ALU as well. When it goes and imports those new items, it's going to just incrementally assign them the ALU 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on throughout the file for you. And then we just have the reasons. So obviously, when we're making a bunch of modifications to inventory, there's going to be adjustments that happen. So either cost adjustments, price, or inventory quantities. And those adjustments have to come with a reason code. So the reason is just going to be import. All right. So when you're ready to import, we're going to choose the subsidiary we're importing to for this demo environment. It's sub2. We're going to choose, again, the file format that we're importing, in this case, inventory. We're going to choose the import map that we had created. So we're going to use our PO import. And then we're going to specify where the file is that we're trying to import. And we actually have that file open down here. This is just a common CSV file in text format right now. So we have our headers along the top, separated by commas, as well as all the data below, again, separated by commas. These are just generated from an Excel document that you would save as a comma delineated file, or you could do tab if you wanted. You just have to denote in the map what type of delineator you're using. So we'll make sure we browse to our file. We got this here. And we're just going to go ahead and test the import. So we'll say, well, we want to do that. We'll do truncate in inventory descriptions as well, just because. And then we'll click import. It's going to give us this little warning. Hey, are you sure you want to make these changes? We'll say yes. Proceed with it. Import, yes. Oops. Our file does not have LU, it has UPC, so it warned us that that was not matching correctly. We'll go import, yes, yes, and it's going to run the import. And the time it takes to import is kind of just based on the amount of stuff, the amount of items you have within the file itself. Okay, we're back. I had paused the video for a little bit while it was thinking about doing the import. We see now it's finished and it says it's done, and it has processed 146 records, which is the amount of data in the file. We'll go back into Prism now and just confirm what we got. Okay. So we have 155 items in this system. Previously, it only had 9, so it actually went through and created all those new products for us with the import tool. And then if we go in and check out our purchasing, we have a purchase order in there. Our purchase order number in the file was 123. And if we can actually go and open this and see what we have in the file there, or in the PO. So that's it. That's how you would take a Excel document, a CSV file, and use the import tool to create your purchase order and import new products or update existing products into Retail Pro Prism.